We've all heard the trailhead rumours about carbon wheels. They're really stiff and harsh. They're actually quite fragile. Only the pros can feel the difference, really. They're too light to ride hard. What are the material myths and the physical facts about carbon wheels? Of all the upgrades that you can make to your bike, probably bar tyres, switching wheels is one of the ones that you can really feel. And if you upgrade smartly, it's a real ride-enhancing upgrade. I feel the debate about material myths has got a little bit more heated and more confusing as riders have their strong beliefs clashing with brands' hype about what materials can do. The debate is really stirring up the fact and the fiction. So, do carbon wheels really live up to the hype, or do the myths have merit? Now, before we get too nerdy, just got a little favour to ask, and that's if you can like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us make good content, hopefully just like this. So give us the thumbs up, it really helps. The wheel is a great example of a synergetic structure. What do I mean? Well, it's greater than the sum of its parts. We've got some nipples, some spokes, a hub, a rim, lace them all together and well, we've got something magical. Wheel builders can take these flexible parts, lace them together to create a tough, robust part that you can ride time and time again. As it's made up of all these individual parts, just one part of it can spell the early demise. So a loose spoke, well, it could spell trouble for the whole wheel. Carbon. You're watching GMBNTech, so you probably know this already, that carbon isn't carbon. In the mountain bike industry, when we talk about carbon, what we're talking about is the amazing material, the literal space-age technology that is carbon fibre. There's lots of different ways to make carbon fibre. We're going to talk about two different styles at the moment. We're going to talk about pre-preg and then we're going to talk about dry. Pre-preg, that's got the resin already infused in it, so all they need to do is lay those parts up. But with those that need the resin infusing, well, we'll talk about that now. You'll often have a metal mould and the parts of carbon, the sheets and sections will get laid up inside. Now, if you want to create a void or a cavity, well, you might have to put a mould or a former or maybe even some foam inside that you can then wrap the additional layers over. A second part of the mould is put on top, so we've got complete seal of this mould. Then we're going to add lots of resin so we can paint that in, it can be injected in, and effectively that's put into an oven and it's all cooked up. And from this material that's as sort of stiff as, well, denim, and then the resin, which is effectively a bit like honey, we get the wonder material, we get the carbon fibre out of it. It's labour intensive and it's very hands-on. Carbon fibre is insanely strong. Compared to steel, it's 5 times as strong. It's twice as stiff whilst being half the weight. But to get these numbers, the way that you make the carbon fibre is really important. How it's made is important, and the order and the orientation and the number of layers of these woven carbon fibre sheets that are added into the mould make a real difference. They can change the material structure at the end. They can change its material properties. Carbon fibre can be made in an anisotropic or isotropic way, and that means that it's going to have different properties in different directions. It is very counterintuitive. For carbon fibre to meet the high performance hype, it's got to be completely uniform. So it can't have any air voids or pockets inside. It can't have any resin rich areas or just bare fibre where there isn't any resin in it, because any of these kind of occurrences will create a point of failure. That's why the construction needs to be an ultra exact process with really high quality control. I feel we need to talk more about the isotropic and anisotropic properties that carbon fibre can have. Why? Well, especially with rims, I feel like it's something that's happening more and more, so it's a really important topic. So, as an example, let's think of a really nice, sort of softer aluminium alloy rim. So, through trail chatter and through kind of lumpier bits on the ride, well, that wheel is going to feel really nice and it's going to absorb some of the bumps and it'll be, the horrible term is compliant. What we mean is flexy. It's just going to be a bit more flexible. Now, that same rim that feels really nice in one direction, if we try and load it into a turn, well, opposed to feeling flexy, it's just going to feel indirect and slightly wobbly. So that's a good example of how in different directions wheels can have, or more specifically materials can have, different properties. So with the alloy material, it's isotropic. It's going to have the same properties in pretty much all directions. Okay, the wheel build and subtle shaping of the rim is going to change it a little bit, but we can't beat the physics of the situation. With carbon fibre, and if we build it right with this anisotropic format, it means that we can have the same compliance as the nice, soft, compliant aluminium rim. So over ridges, over bumps, it's going to be really compliant, it's going to be comfortable. But the same rim profile and the same construction, when we load it into a turn, it can feel really stiff, direct, and give us the steering that we need. It is counterintuitive, but this is where the magic of modern carbon fibre manufacturing lays. Back to those trailhead chats, and the first myth that we need to discuss is they're really stiff and they're really harsh. Okay, I think like many a myth, there's a thread of truth within this myth. We have to go back in time, back to the kind of late 80s when carbon was just coming into mountain biking. There were two brands pushing the boundaries of carbon manufacture, and that was Kestrel and that was Trimble. They both made full carbon frames. One was full suspension as well, so it was really innovative. And whilst they were innovative and they were using carbon in a new way, the main goal back then was to make bikes as light as possible, to the detriment of how they rode. So these carbon bikes were not stiff. Those early frames were a bit noodly, but as carbon evolved and manufacturing techniques evolved, things changed. And stiffness was enhanced hugely, especially on frames. And it's one of those kind of inputs where we have to look back to where frames were flexy and carbon parts were relatively new to understand what's going on with carbon rims, because they're relatively new. And those very first carbon rims, well, because of the backstory of where carbon has come from in mountain biking, the original founders of these brands wanted to make something that was going to be really strong and really robust. And that equaled the ride was really stiff. Initially, lots of pros, lots of racers really liked this responsiveness. But now we've moved on from those early iterations of carbon wheels where they were just stiff to be robust. We're now in a really good era of carbon wheels where they can be stiff in certain directions, but they can also be compliable and, well, smooth and floaty and nice. That's thanks to the anisotropic properties, or the potential of those properties with carbon fibre, that changing of the layup to change how a material reacts in different directions. Because of all the potential of what you can do with carbon fibre, where you're changing the layup and changing how the wheel works, big brands have invested a lot of money and a lot of time in developing new wheels. And that means that they've developed really good ways of developing a wheel that can feel direct and supportive, but also compliant. And they've developed wheels for really specific purposes. So yes, you can get enduro wheels that are tough and strong and robust and quite stiff, but you've also got cross-country wheels that don't have to have those attributes, so they can be more compliant and mellower to ride. So are they stiff and harsh? Well, some of them might be stiffer, but are they all that? No. I think we can say that that myth is busted. They're actually really fragile. Okay, this is another one of those myths where I can see where the sort of kernel of truth or kernel of knowledge has started to grow from, but the reality is quite different. Okay, so we travel back in time again to when carbon parts first came out, and mountain biking was in a cult of lightness, where basically the weight was the only measure of making a part good or not. We didn't really care too much about whether it enhanced the ride experience, because we were just caring about lightweight, because that was what was deemed to make a ride better. We could climb better. But as bikes have developed, wheels and carbon products all over have developed. And that's meant that, no, they're not fragile like those really early parts that had to be made to a really specific weight. And now, okay, weights on quite a few brands have crept up a little bit, but so have lifetime warranties on products. So are they fragile? No, they're not. If anything, carbon fibre, thanks to the properties in it and the way it can be made, it's really, really strong. And now big brands are investing lots and lots into both R&D to get these specific wheels for the niches that we have in cycling, but also drilling down into how to actually construct the rim and that layup process and that where the plies go to consistently make really good products. It's time consuming and you have to have really good quality control, but the big brands are there, they're doing it. So back to that question, they're really fragile? No, that one's busted too. Only the pros can feel the advantages. Okay, I feel like you probably know already, I've worked as a pro mechanic, so I've worked with some pro racers, and yes, some of them can feel infinitesimal changes, be that to tyre compound or even to spoke tension. So sometimes they really can notice stuff, but the ride changing differences that you get with really good carbon wheels, I feel like every rider can feel. And I say that coming from a race mechanic who isn't racing at warp speed. And actually, here's a fun fact about some of those pro racers. Yes, some of them are really highly tuned beasts that can tell the difference between all these different things. But some of them are just really, really fast on a bike and can't really tell you much about the bike that's moving around underneath them. So for the everyday trail rider, these wheels can make a difference, and a difference that you can feel on the road. And you don't have to be a pro to feel those advantages. Is it a pro-only advantage? Well, no. I think that's another myth that we've busted. They're too light to ride hard. Okay, I feel like this is sort of a legacy thing that arcs back to near single-use parts when that cult of lightness is greatness happened with XC racers. But we've moved on from that. XC has moved on from that as well. And lots of bike brands have invested lots of time and lots of money to make better products that do last longer, that are more robust. And with that, like, the weights have crept up a little bit, but so too, well, the products do last longer. And also we've now got lifetime warranties. Brands are standing behind their products, which didn't really happen in this space before. And that's a really good thing. We've had lots of changes with bikes over the past few years. We've had different wheel sizes, we've had different hub spacing sizes, but all of that seems to have settled down a little bit. So yes, these wheels are a big investment, but the performance upgrades are there. There are advantages. And now we've got a little bit of more of a settled place. It's worth the investment, I think, because these wheels can see you through, well, maybe a couple of bikes. Are they too light to ride hard? I think that's busted. Why? I'm not just saying that from my own experience. We've seen it on the World Cup scene at Enduros and XC races where teams have used the same wheels all season. So yeah, that myth is well and truly busted. I feel that we've burst a lot of the myths around carbon wheels. They're just not true. The modern wheels are really robust, they're well designed, they're using and leaning into what carbon can give you, these really amazing ride qualities, and they are better to ride. The ride experience that you get from carbon wheels is nicer, it's elevating the ride experience. They are a really big investment, I'm really mindful of that. They are big money. But I think the fact that we've got XC racers, enduro racers, downhill racers, proving that they're robust enough to use for a whole season. And also the big brands are stepping up with lifetime warranties. Okay, they're not for everyone, but for quite a few people, I think carbon wheels could be a really good thing. Okay, that I feel covers carbon wheels to quite a lot of depth. But what other myths are out there that you think we can have a look at? Let us know in the comments below.